Live. I'm Jeff C. here with Grace Duffy and our amazing guest. So
Hey, we all showed up.
we all did. It is, and it's live this time. I have been actually. I don't know if you guys have been following my Instagram stories. I've been at Disney. I had an event there, and I was speaking at, and then we stayed a couple days extra. We drove, did the last kind of family road trip, so it was a lot of fun. But I'm, wishing upon a star. Still wish I was there. Chad, doesn't your son? Didn't you say your son works there?
He does. He does work there. He was a performer,
Yes.
and then when COVID raised, its evil self,
Right.
they did away with that, and so he's working attractions now. It's not his favorite thing. He misses the
I bet.
performance part, but they're hanging in there. He and his girlfriend both work there, and they're both hoping that the everything comes back.
Yeah. There were a lot of people coming back when I was there, so I know it's not full capacity, but oh my gosh. So before we get to start the show, I want to make sure to give a shout out to the amazing, as always, Sabrina, going, hey, it's me, Sabrina. Hey, Sabrina, I'm so glad to see you here live once again. This is going to be a fun show. I want to do a little bit of talk of tech because, our sponsor is Ecamm. And by the way, if you want to find out more about Ecamm, they are amazing. You can go to socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. But they just released a new version, and I love my Stream Deck. So I use the Stream Deck to switch cameras and bring up all these cool little things and all that stuff. But they came out with this new version, and they have support now for the Loop. Do you have one of these, Chad? A Loop Deck. And you can
I don't have the Loop Deck.
Oh my gosh, for editing stuff, it's so amazing. I love my Stream Deck, but the Loop Deck, if I had to do it over again, I may just get a Loop Deck because you can program the buttons and you can use it for editing, and it's just super slick. But anyway, that's me. But
is the Loop Deck an Elgato product as well, or is that
no? It's a different.
Okay. No.
It's a different thing, but it's so slick. They have one that you can doesn't have all the. What I got it for is the wheel at the bottom, so I can really quickly go and scroll through stuff. And these are all programs, and they all change depending on what program you're in. So if I'm in Premiere, it changes the buttons, and I have these analog because I'm an old man that I like to flip switches and move things. That's really, really cool. But it all switches for whatever program you're in. So I love it. So, but they have support for that now. If you are an Ecamm user, you can program it all and it all work, and it's just stinking amazing. But I want to talk about really quick what Chad has on his ears, because I saw when we were in Denver, you let me put those on, and I went bananas, and I actually bought a pair. I use your link, by the way. And, they're amazing. So talk about what they are. You're using them to monitor as we actually doing this show. So tell people what they are.
Yeah, so these are the brand is Aeroplex. They're
Aftershocks.
Compression.
Yeah.
Or Aftershocks.
Yeah.
I think Aeroplex is the model.
Right.
So they don't go in my ear, right? They I don't know exactly how they work. It's something with the bone, in your ears and whatever. And so they're safer for your eardrums. One, they're not in your ear, and you can hear what's going on around you when you wear them. And the sound is great. It's not noise canceling, but that's part of the point, is that it doesn't cancel, so that you can still hear somebody sneaking up behind you or be listening to music while you're having a conversation with someone, whatever the case may be. And they're incredibly light. I forget I have them on.
Yeah. So the thing that's amazing for me is I use them when I go walking, because I don't want to be plastered over somebody's windshield, because that's the thing. It's like they get really close, and this way I can hear them and jump, hopefully, out of harm's way. But anyway, we're going to start. We're going to hit play on the podcast machine, record on the podcast machine. But I want to do a shout out to Marissa says, hey, friends. Hey, thank you for stopping by over on LinkedIn. And our good friend, Ian Anderson Gray, he says, jolly hockey sticks from the UK. That's
jolly hockey sticks to you.
I don't know what that means, but
I'm trying to picture Ian with a hockey stick.
You just can't. You got to take that image out of your brain. So anyway, I'm gonna hit record on the. By the way, we would love it if you guys would share this across the socials, and also we're gonna be talking all about storytelling, which is huge for businesses today. What that means, and if you know somebody who would be really interested in this subject, feel free to mention them down below. Call them into the conversation. Even if they can't watch live, it'd be great if they could watch the replay, because we are in here answering questions, and I know Chad is going to stick around as well. So, Chad, pronounce your middle name. Chad. Yes.
You need my mother's maiden name.
Your mother's
as well?
maiden name. Yeah. What is it
really
again before I say it right on the podcast?
It's Ia Peterson.
Ia. Okay. That's what Grace did. I just want to make sure.
I put it in the show notes for you.
I saw it, but I just didn't trust you. That's my fault.
Phonetically? You put it phonetically?
She does. Because I am horrible at this stuff.
I put all the names in phonetic syllables for him in our show notes.
That's awesome. I never get to say it. I rarely get to say it because the only time I really even give my last name is if I'm checking in somewhere,
right?
And so they say, "What's your last name?" And I just immediately just go ILLA because they're going to ask me anyway.
Yeah. So good. So she was right. I was just double checking. So I'm gonna hit go on the podcast recorder. Thank you guys all for joining us. Feel free to ask your questions. We're going on today, and we will get started. Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not.
And I'm Grace Duffy, and this is the show that keeps you up to date in the world of social media.
Today, we're joined by Chad Ia Peterson, and we're going to explore what storytelling means for business. We're going to be covering and breaking down the elements of what makes a good story, tips on how you can improve on the skill for yourself and your job, and why your brand needs a storytelling strategy for 2022. How are you doing today, Chad? I had so much fun hanging out with you at Denver. I'm so glad that we got to have you on the show.
I know it's been a long time. A lot of people, since we got to hang out, a lot of people don't know that Jeff C. and we go way back. And actually, the way we met is, I think it was like 1997 or so. I was Jeff's stunt double when he was the floor manager at Chuck E. Cheese.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
He was the animatronic, wasn't he? That's what he was, right?
I acted as, yes. So we're going to be talking about storytelling, as you can tell. But if you don't know who Chad is, following a hardcore snipe hunt, a botched pizzeria robbery, 2 years in a bear suit, and several moments atop a 6-foot unicycle, Chad Ia Peterson, a.k.a. the Story Catcher, discovered the compelling power of stories. And today, Chad helps you find and craft the stories you didn't even know you had to create deeper connections and open a portal of belonging. So now Chad he's funny and he's got a quirkiness about him, but I was so impressed with your speech at Social Media Day Denver. So, I really was. That was a great presentation. You are a natural storyteller, so I'm excited to have you on the show today with us.
Oh, I appreciate it. That means a lot. It's no butt massage story, but
Yes. Well, we'll get into that later. Grace,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Chad. In this hardcore snipe hunt, this botched pizza robbery, and these 2 years in a bear suit, how did you discover the compelling power stories? How did you become the story catcher in all this?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know that anybody's ever really asked me that one. I think it just became, in my career and the quirky path, it's sometimes the unplanned things that end up being the best things, which is actually kind of what I share with people with their stories. It's the things you didn't realize were there. And as far as the storytelling, it became more of a thing where other people were telling me, you're great at telling stories. You're good at connecting with people through telling stories and getting other people to share theirs. And so it wasn't anything I was trying to do from a business perspective. It was me just kind of being me, and then other people being bold enough, I guess, to say, hey, there's something there. So I guess that's how it happened. I was raised in a family and with some friends who kept me on stage. We did a lot of theater. It's just become a natural part of me. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy.
Well, you are a natural storyteller, and some of our friends are here. And Gabe says he was wonderful guest on with Mike Alton. Are you going to give stickers away today? So already people are wanting stuff from you, Chad. So
well, that's hey Gabe, it's obviously I did a really poor job of that time with Mike Alton because he was my guest. So
That's
So I've got to work
Ian,
on taking more control of my show.
That's right. So you weren't even there. So Ian goes, if you're going to rob something, why not go for something more lucrative like a bank or a casino rather than a pizza place? So are you going to talk about that story later, or are you just going to leave us hanging?
We talk about whatever anybody wants. If you read that, it doesn't say anywhere that I was the robber.
Oh, so you were robbed as in the pizza place, or were you just like the car man? I mean, what was the deal?
He was the pizza.
Oh,
he was the pizza.
Yeah, I was running the digital component of the whole heist. We hacked into their system, make sure we turned their security cameras off, before we swiped all the pizzas from the buffet. No, I was actually, this was way back in the 90s when I was a young guy, and I worked for a pizza company, a buffet style pizza place, and I had just locked the doors when three guys showed up, masks on,
wow,
and machetes, which was actually, to me, seemed more scary than the gun component.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this if you're gonna kill me, I'd rather it be quick. Maybe they brought him to cut the pizza. I don't know.
Right.
They weren't able to get in, and that was where the botched component of it was. But it left a scar for sure.
Well,
I can remember we had one employee with us. He ran track, and I told everybody to go to the back, and he went to the back, and then he ran out the back door and took off, which we had to obviously get on.
Lock the
later,
door. Did he lock the door behind him, or
Yeah.
did he just leave it wide open?
But it automatically locked.
Okay.
But it's like, dude, you didn't know if anybody was out there. Yeah. It's like, way to be a hero, bro. Like,
there you go, Ian.
You chose fight, and he chose flight. So there you go.
That's right. So as we get started, so one of the things about storytelling is, you also want to tell a story visually. And one way that you can do that is with our pals over at Ecamm, who's helping produce this show. You can find out more at socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. They're the ones that allow me to do all these cool camera switches, bring up these lower thirds. And, and actually when I record it, it separates the track from my podcast. There's so many cool things. They just had a new release. So make sure if you haven't checked out Ecamm in a while, you need to go check out because they've got a bunch of new features. You can find out more at socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. By the way, so we've got some great comments already coming up here. So Grace, I'm going to kind of steal your opening thunder here because this is a question I think, and this is from Marissa, that ties right into what you were going to ask Chad. Yeah. But Chad, how do you determine what stories are the ones to tell?
Wow, that's a tough one, because depending on the audience and what the goal is, obviously that plays a big part. I've told stories before that didn't resonate, but at the end of the day, my personal feeling on it is that as long as it's appropriate for the situation, right? You don't want to tell about your wild escapades during your college years if you're teaching a 6-year-old Sunday school class, right? You just want to make sure everything's put in there.
Yeah.
The right, probably not. I'm going to go with definitely not, but we're all different. So context plays a big part of it, right? But at the end of the day, when you share a story that's yours, you're sharing a part of yourself, and nothing builds relationships and connection better than when you're sharing a part of yourself. We're built for story. We're wired for story. I often, start out a presentation giving a shout out to Mom, for all the nights she tucked us into bed and read that latest white paper or Google study.
Right.
She didn't do that. She told us stories because they comforted us, but they also connected us. Stories are just, for me, Jeff and I will always have Denver,
Yeah.
And there'll be a story there of how we met. So determining which ones are right, it's Marissa, it's just got to come down to the context of what the situation is.
Good. Go ahead, Grace. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was like, so building on this in many stories, because we are talking about a storytelling strategy for your business or a brand. And in many cases, stories about businesses and brand tend to be about personal struggles on the way up. I'm thinking about How I Built This, right? One of my favorite shows other favorite shows that I listen to. And all of it is really, and sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're poignant, but it is all about the struggle. Do stories necessarily have to be sad or traumatic to resonate? I mean, I know some people uh, tend to be more private than others and don't necessarily want to talk about the awful experience or make an awful experience the cornerstone of building their brand or building the story of their business. Like, do they necessarily have to be about struggle?
No, of course not. I mean, the struggle. That's an interesting word for a story to be compelling, and to truly be what purists, I guess, would call a story. There does have to be some kind of obstacle that was overcome, right? There's always a hero in the story, that main character, and there's a goal, there's something that character is wanting to achieve or make happen, or sometimes a conflict or something that has gotten in their way. So there has to be something in the way. It doesn't have to be successful either. That's another thing. The story, to be a story, doesn't necessarily have to end with triumph. Sometimes they end with it didn't work. It's what is the audience going to connect to in that particular moment. There's lots of people who have failed. We've all failed. And so sharing stories of moments where you didn't overcome the tragedy or you didn't make it to the goal. Maybe you learned something, though, along the way. And so you're sharing that story, and other people who've been there, now they don't feel alone. Now they feel connected to, you know what, this guy's doing well, but he had moments where he failed, and he's also willing to share those as well. They can be funny. They can be somewhat appear to be completely irrelevant. When I share the snipe hunting story that Jeff heard, is it really a business story? No, but it talks about my character and who I am as a person when it comes to saying I'll do things that I'll say I'll do. There's not any business component to it. It's just a fun story with a little bit of a message. So
right. So one of the things, so I just spoke when I was at Disney at Momentum with Lou Mangello's community, and we did a kind of a storytelling workshop. And one of the things that I think is important, I think you need to have an elevator pitch, right? You need to have like what your business is and what it's about. That's important. But one of the things I encouraged in the workshop is we got everybody together and went around the table and talked about what's their story. What's that thing that connects people to you? Like Lou's story is he was a big shot lawyer, wasn't happy, kind of gave it a really cushy, lucrative job up, and did this thing at Disney and made it successful. That's his story. That's his in a nutshell, and that's what everything kind of filters through. So I think it's important to, for us to figure out what our story is. And I talked about signature stories. Like I talked about my chiropractic story that you referenced at the beginning. And I tell that story all the time. One, because it lets people kind of relax and kind of know who I am. It's okay to laugh and that kind of stuff. But it's one of my signature stories, and I have a couple of them. And Sabrina says, like, here she goes, I have a million stories. And I think a lot of people have all these stories. And like you said, like some of them don't have anything to do with business. But let's break down kind of like the elements of a good brand or business story. So talk to us a little bit about it, like story structure, mechanics of writing or producing a good brand story. Does it, what does that entail, and what ruins a good story? Like we've all seen people who've like started to tell a story and you're like, please stop, just please stop.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Sabrina, that's awesome. By the way, the millions of stories. And that's one of the things I actually run into quite often is people that it's completely the opposite, right? They don't feel like they have stories that they can share or that are worth sharing. And that's what I spend a lot of my time with clients more trying to dig down and find the story, or sometimes the story behind the story, the real why behind their brand or what it is that they do. And so one of the things a lot of the brands, of course, up front make as a big mistake is they make the brand or the product the hero of the story. So the first thing you want to make sure is that a person is the hero of the story. If it's your story, it would be you. If you're sharing somebody else's story, they were involved with your business or your brand, then it's theirs. If it's a customer, then they're the hero, unless somebody that works at your company was their hero. But the product is not the hero. The example I give, and I guess some of these younger generations now haven't seen Star Wars, so I'm starting to realize that, and that's become an incredibly painful thing to deal with. But when you go and watch Star Wars for the first time, the old ones, you leave, you want to be able to use the Force, but the Force isn't the hero, right? You want to be Luke Skywalker, and you want to be able to use the Force. And what a lot of brands instead is they would make the Force the hero, and you can't connect to an object. You can't connect to a brand. You connect to people. So that would be the first thing. So I would make sure that you're the hero. And if whatever the product is that you're selling or using helps you achieve what it is you're trying to do, then that's the tool, the sword in the hero's hand that helps them slay the dragon. So that would be the first thing, is make sure that you've got it crafted from that perspective.
So I want to just ask about that. So you talked about, not the Force is not the story, it's the tool. So there's also the flip side of and you said to make the story about yourself, but a lot of times you can go too far, and we've all known those people, and we've seen them, especially on social media, of it's always about them. So how's the balance of when you tell a story of connecting, and you even mentioned at the beginning talking about, the struggles, like when things don't actually work always the way you want them to, and having a place where people can connect with you. Where's the balance of that? Because I've seen it go the other way. It's like some of those posts, and we could probably name names if we needed to, of it's always about them. It's always perfect. It's always, buy my stuff, but it's about them. So, how do you find that balance?
Yeah, that some of that I think becomes deeper than just a storytelling strategy that can be taught. Some of those, in some instances, a lot of those instances, I think that goes deeper, just into the individual person and who they are.
Gotcha.
Some of us are just very much about ourselves and about who we are, and making sure everybody knows how great and wonderful we are. We put on these personas, and make. I think that goes deeper than just a storytelling component. The best. At the end of the day, the purpose of the story is to build relationships that are founded on a deeper level of trust that then make people say, I want to do business with that person or that brand or whatever the case may be, that they relate to it. They get me. So I would say that while, yes, there's moments where you need to share your story, the higher level thinking and the goal, Mark Schaefer would agree with this. His book, The Uprising.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's the event we go to. Marketing Rebellion is the book. That the word of mouth and the customer story, it needs to become the marketing. So the next level of that would be to start searching out and asking other people their stories as they relate to your brand. If you can get those, that's much better. I mentioned the window or the portal of belonging, and there's just nothing more strong than asking someone else their story. So that would help you get away a little bit from yourself.
So Ian,
yeah,
I know we're asking all these deep questions, and that's just. I'm gonna put you on the spot and get these deep questions. So Ian has
that's
this.
Fine. And then
this is from Ian.
Ian's a great example. Just the egotistical self.
Oh, sorry.
Did you say he's
here.
watching?
Yeah, he's here.
Oh.
So he goes, this is a great question. Do you think we are too close to our own situations to effectively tell our own stories? So perhaps that's why we need people around us to help tease out those personal stories. One of the things I did in that chiropractic story that we referenced before came from is I asked friends, like, what is a funny thing that about me that a story that I've told you that I think I should do. So I kind of crowdsourced what I should talk about in my presentation. So would you, like Ian says, are we too close to our own situations? What would you tell Ian to do if he's having trouble finding a story?
Ian's spot on. That is consistently the problem, is we're too close to it. Not only from two perspectives. One that you brought up, Jeff, that we become so self-centered that we don't realize how egotistical and arrogant and obnoxious we're sounding.
Right.
But the other side of that is I don't have stories. And the problem that happens there is that's everyday life, right? You're just living life, and you don't recognize those little moments that actually might have a story component to it. So as you get to where you can start to recognize those, one of the things I encourage people to do is to keep like a journal, or I use a Google Sheet, on my phone, and either at the end of the day or in the moment, if you can, just jot a few things down of, wow, this happened today. This is the impact it had on me, just a few details, so that later you can come back to it. And if you feel like, there's a story there, then you can put it together and make it something that you want to share, because we forget them because they're just life. So yeah, Ian, that's a huge piece, having somebody else who can help dig those stories out. And I'll tell you what, that's my favorite thing to do with people, because you can tell when they've stopped thinking, for lack of a better phrase, and just started sharing. I can give you an example. I was shooting video in Vegas for a company a couple weeks ago, and while I was there, I asked their marketing person if we could get the CEO's story of how this all came about. And they said, yeah, let me talk to him. And so we talked to him, and immediately they went into CEO business mode, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the purpose? What's the goal? And we said, just to connect with people and just let them get to know you on a more personal level. Yeah, but what's the whole purpose here? What are we trying to tell them? And their marketing person, bless her, she said the best thing. She goes, we don't know yet.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, that's great. He's like, well, what is it that you want me to say? What's the script? And then I was like, okay, now I'll be bold and I'll say the same thing, right? We don't know yet. And so I started to explain to him, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm going to just dig deep. I'm going to dig deep, and you may tell me something, but I'm going to ask you, well, why did you do that? Well, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but why? Why did you make that decision? What was going on? And I remember vividly, we sat there and we started talking, and he started giving this, this is how we started, and blah, 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 and we wanted to connect people, and blah, 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 and we just kept digging and digging, and then all of a sudden, his body language changed. He went from, to he was leaning forward, and there was like this twinkle in his eyes, and he had a little smile, and just his whole demeanor changed as he started to remember this moment he hadn't thought about in a long time. And he started laughing and making little jokes, and he forgot he was like CEO guy. He forgot the camera was there, and he just started sharing this really cool story of how he came up with the idea of what it was he wanted to build. In fact, he even got so loose with it that there was somebody who had kind of let him down, but because he was let down, it caused him to come up with the idea. He was like, I need to remember to send that guy a thank you note for sucking.
You know what that reminds me of is when you're an adult and your parents start telling you real stories about what actually happened,
Oh
like
yeah.
growing up, like their stories, and you're just like, "Whoa, who are you? What is going on?"
Yeah.
Gary has a really great question here, Chad. He asks, "What if your customers are large, corporate, and reluctant to go on record or secretive about telling their story?" And I understand this working for a software company. I know that a lot of our listeners here either run or work for B2B or service based where they're trying to empower their clients to do something, but they don't necessarily they're pretty reluctant to talk about what they're doing or what they're, what I guess secretive about telling their story.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, there you obviously there's articles, there's books, there's all of these things, that you could send them and tell them and blah blah blah. But one, they're probably not going to read it. And two, if they do, they also may not buy it. Honestly, the best way is you have to be a little sneaky. And that you do. You have to be a little sneaky. If you can get your big client and the people who are, the ones with the, their head up their butt or whatever you want to call it, that they're just
Right.
so tight-lipped. They're, we have to keep this image or whatever. If you can get them alone or in a setting where you can just talk with them, then if you lead the discussion right and you make it about them, because I don't care if they're all secretive, deep down they want to tell it. They want to share it. They want to talk about themselves. We all want to. We love when somebody else is interested in us. And I've had moments like that where I've sat and had those conversations and just started talking about them, and they started sharing. And when they started sharing something and you start digging and say, well, so what was it about that? Why did, I feel like was incredibly important to you. Why was that so important to you? Well, actually when I was younger, blah, 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 blah. Wow. How did that happen? What was the situation? You start digging. They don't know you're digging. They just think you're interested, but you're also digging. And at the end, that's when you have to make them realize that was so impactful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I feel like we've been doing business together, but I feel more connected to you than I ever have. That was incredible. And not only that, but I even think differently about your business now, that understanding that part of it, we need to share that with others. If they see how it affected you, then you can try to sell them on the fact that it will do the same for others. That's what I've done.
So,
but to just tell them you need to share your story, they're like, whatever. Just have a conversation with them and get the story.
So real quick, because you mentioned you're doing video. One of the things that I used to do, and I don't know if this is ethical or not, but I did it, is that I would turn off the red light that would, that would record, most cameras had a red button that would flash, like when you're recording. I turned that off, and I would set up the camera beforehand, and I just ask, like what you were doing, asking those questions, go like, well, why did you do that? I mean, yeah, they're getting set up, and I would record it all. And that's when I would get most all the takes and everything that I would want to. And so, and a lot of times they would say, okay, when we start, I'm like, I'm done. I've got what I needed. And they're like, what? I was like, I was recording the whole time. And they usually, I never had anybody get mad, but you may use that a little bit to, be careful, but, let them know that you're recording. But I don't know. Have you ever done that, Chad? I mean, have you ever said, oh, by the way, we've been recording the whole time?
You're like Jeff C comes over for dinner, and then you have to go and look for bugs in your home.
That's right. I'm like, because I might need it later. Yeah, I might use it. So
no. I've never done it like that.
I wasn't sneaky about it. I would just hit record and turn off the red light, and I'd be talking to them. That was it. I wasn't I wasn't bugging their office. So Grace, all this stuff before the show, it's recorded.
But we've done, I did some things for a group of emergency rooms, and the goal of the whole thing was they wanted to showcase the things that the doctors did in the community when they weren't working, to kind of tell the community, look at us, look at what we do. We love the community. And so first of all, the doctors, none of them wanted to even do it. Right. They didn't want to be on camera, but they kind of got like this directive from the higher ups, you're going to do it. And so I got them with the camera. Now, when I'm shooting things like this, I actually will use a phone. So it's smaller, it's less intimidating. And then I'll kneel down at the same level, kind of off to the side, and just tell them, hey, just you and I are just talking. Don't worry about this. We'll just talk. And we started going through it. And I started to find out, like, these doctors, when they were done working, they were exhausted. And they really just wanted to go home and be with their family. And so they weren't really doing a lot of like extra stuff, which is what the goal was. So I started just asking them, why they worked at these particular facilities versus, a big hospital, or, why did they enjoy being a part of this business? Why did they go to school? And it would just dug down. And as they would tell me things, then dig in. Oh, wow, that sounds incredible. Why did you decide to do blah, blah, blah? Oh, well, what for? And what ended up happening is every single one of them ended up sharing a very similar phrase. And that was that they loved working at this particular emergency place because they had more time with the patients. And the phrase they all were using was, it lets me be the kind of doctor I went to medical school to be. And by letting them share their stories and their journey as growing up and wanting to become a doctor, and then finally ending up here, that actually, so it ended up turning into a whole new campaign. They forgot the camera was there, though. So they knew we were recording. I didn't go all like, Jeff C. stealth mode. But at the same time, they forgot the camera was there.
Right.
And for me, I think them knowing the camera there is there helps, because I can tell when they forget that the camera's there.
Yeah.
That's good.
And 95% of the time, the moment they forget the camera's there, you visually can see it, and they're now just talking and sharing without thinking. They're just sharing emotionally. And that's where the good stuff comes from. We can get into the whole story structure, the beginning, middle, end, 3 acts, introduce the character and those kinds of things. And those are important, setting a scene and creating a visual component so that, you can take people into your world, where you're going. I share the snipe hunting one, and when I started off, I say I was sitting in my bedroom located all the way at the back of our old 1970s house in Beaumont, Texas, with the shag carpet and the wood paneling, with my new backpack, filled to the brim with everything I'd need for my first trip to summer camp. And so, you want to do that. You want to paint that picture. But before you can do all those things, you have to get the story. So
yeah.
So Chad, tell me about all the times that people have told you too much, and how do you decide what to keep and what to delete from these stories?
I can't think of a time where someone is like just overshared in one of these situations. I know I've been around people who've overshared, but I wasn't trying to capture their story.
Right.
It
sounds like you're
just kind of like, wow.
It sounds like you, like, for the doctors, like, you're pleasantly surprised most times. Like, when you start digging, you're like, oh, that really resonates. And this is like, why haven't you shared this before? Because this is a great connection kind of event.
Yeah. And it's depending on the situation, what does overshare even mean? Like, at what point has somebody crossed some line? What is that line? Is there a line? It depends, I guess, on the audience, right?
Mhm.
I there's times where sharing the fact that years ago you made bad choices and did time, in
Mhm.
jail might be relevant to the audience and the story that you're telling. And there's other times where it may be better if people don't know that. So it's a kind of a case by case thing. I don't,
Yeah. I think it is. It's
so,
very.
yeah.
So, Gabe asked this question: have you ever been in an amazing conversation with someone that was supposed to be on camera and didn't realize the camera wasn't actually recording? Like you left the lens cap off or something like that.
Oh, that's the worst, right? Like, I've
Yes.
even had was shooting interviews for a client. They were interviewing other people, and they would start doing like preliminary type stuff with them and having these conversations. And I was setting things up, or I had stepped away for a second, and I would walk back and I hear them like sharing these really cool moments. And I'm like, what the flip? What are you doing?
Wait,
Like,
wait.
well, we wanted to kind of get some things lined out. I'm like, yeah, but there's no way you're gonna be able to retell that now with what I just saw. Like, because like you could see like their excitement. Oh yeah, this is this, and the other person's reaction is like, what? And it's like, no, look, you guys are like, you guys sell dog toys for a living. You're not actors. You guys are not gonna be able to recreate what just happened.
Right. So we know who Chad's clients are now. So
No,
Chris, I did not secretly record you.
Boy over here on the floor. So.
I didn't secretly record you, and I'm getting a lot of flack. Even Sabrina, I thought, you, she's like bad boy. So okay, what I really did is I usually would ask.
The truth is, Jeff is recording you right now.
That's what I would do. Really, it was like I would set up, and they would say like, "Can I have a run through?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'd always record when they say, "Can we practice?" Because that was usually the best one because they felt more relaxed. So it was kind of that kind of thing. So anyway, I don't go around just secretly like, wonder what I can capture today. No, I don't do that. So go ahead, Grace.
Well,
sorry.
but I think in the world we live in, though, and Chad and I've gone to a lot of video conferences recently together, and everyone there just knows that everyone has a camera around, and you're just prepared for it. So I think we also live. Jeff
Right.
and you and I also live in this world where everything, any moment we could be recorded because of just the people we know and the industry we work in. So I don't know that doesn't strike me as a bad thing either. So, but moving on to our next section, Jeff,
I'm
about
around.
improved. Oh, what?
Yeah, with Chad around, he'll record.
I said, especially if I'm around.
Yeah, you're the gift catcher too now. I used your gift. So, Chad, tell us a little bit about that too. I want to take a moment and talk about that. But I have to say, I used your GIF in a presentation, your GIFs of me at Video Marketing World in a presentation, and it like blew all the other PowerPoints away. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, tell about that a little bit, what that is.
Awesome. So, look, I got to give the credit to that to my lovely bride. She had figured out that on her Samsung Galaxy, there was a native app that would let her take a moment and turn it into a GIF. And I think we were with Aaron Sell and Joel Com, and the two other, marketing people. I know you guys know them. Mm-hmm. And she had made a couple, and I was like, how did you do that? What did you do? And I was like, okay, there's something there. That's pretty cool. So the next thing we went to was Social Media Week Lima in 2019. And I shot just random video while I was there, and then started going through and editing it and thought, wow, there's some moments in here where people are making some really quirky moves or doing something kind of fun. Right. And I turned them into GIFs. And people just really loved it. First, they thought it was so cool that they were a GIF. And yeah, I say GIF, but that's because I tell people I'm the GIF guy. And it sounds dumb if I say I'm the GIF guy. It doesn't make sense. So that's my rationalization. And so then I was able to get a branded Giphy account, and then I can upload them, and I could tag people so they could find themselves and do these things. And then Video Marketing World actually brought me there just to create GIFs. Um, you know what I love about them is one, there there's a personalized, there's a connection, right? If I
Right.
create a GIF of somebody else, it something quirky happens with our friendship. It just takes it to a new level. I think it's healthy. Maybe it's not. But but then they can use them like Grace did, or somebody else, because they're uploaded, right? So other people can find them on Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or whatever. But they tell a story, and the fun part with a GIF is that they also have the ability to tell whatever story you need it to tell in that particular moment. That's what I really love about them.
Well, I think I quit talking to you after you made mine, so I don't know if it deepened our friendship or not. I think maybe it may have hurt it a little. No, but it's there. I think it's a great way.
What I loved about your GIF is that you've told, and this is another power of story, right? You've shared this particular story, the butt story.
Yeah, the chiropractic story. Yeah.
I mean chiropractor story.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I labeled it wrong.
That's right.
But people know what I mean. But I shared that GIF. And people immediately, just from the motion and whatever it was you were doing, started saying, "Oh, that's the chiropractor story. Blah, 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 I love that story."
I think Grace said, "Oh, he's telling that story again." Oh my gosh, is what she said. Yeah.
Just from the hand movements, I knew. Yeah. Yes, the Jeff GIFs, the Jeff GIFs, and the GIF guy.
The GIF guy and the Jeff GIF. Oh my gosh. So let's go into, because we could talk about story is fascinating because more and more jobs are requiring storytelling skills on social media. You need to tell a story, like you said, with the GIFs or GIFs or whatever. They tell a story in a few microseconds, and people love them and love to use them. So storytelling is this huge thing, skill that sadly I don't think we're teaching as well as we used to anymore, and is becoming more and more important. And I think that's why people like Chad are so important to teach this and give great examples. So let's talk about, what, how to improve your storytelling skills. So let's say I know I suck as a storyteller. Chad, how can I become a better storyteller? Do I need to have more jokes? Do I need to make people cry? What do I need to have a joke, then make them cry? What do I do to become a better storyteller?
Yeah. One, start telling them. There's books and there's different things out there that you can read to give you tips. I think there's some things that are, for some people, are obviously more an innate skill. Like for me, my wit is just something that kind of comes naturally, where like when you're around Jeff, you can tell it's like more forced, and
it's made up. Yeah.
But that's the biggest thing. I would tell you probably the best book I ever read on storytelling. I'm not saying I've read them all, but one of the things that would always drive me crazy is reading a book about storytelling that didn't use stories to tell how to tell stories.
Right.
It became too textbook, and there's a book called Storyworthy. In fact, you can see it like kind of above my head back there, actually. I have other books, but that one is always like laid out right there in the front. It's called Storyworthy. And this guy's won, multiple awards for his ability to audibly tell stories. But the methods that he teaches are incredibly valuable, and he uses story to do it. So you're looking and reading stories while you're learning how he sucks people in using different methods. I'll give you one of my favorite things from him, and other people share it as well, but it really stuck when I read it from him. And that is, when you're telling a story, is to try to get away from the word "and," because typically when we tell something to somebody, we'll say, "So we did such and such, and then we blah 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 blah, and then this, blah, 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 and then And those are the moments where, Jeff, you mentioned earlier, you start kind of going, oh my gosh, when's this going to end? It becomes just a travel log. Right. And so instead of the word "and," you want to find moments where you can throw in the word "but." Not the same way Jeff did with his chiropractor story. Just one T is all we want. But you want to use that word because now that throws in more conflict, right? Everything's going good, but this happened. Blah, 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 blah. We get to this point, but blah, 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 blah. So the more that you can do that, that alone will help you a lot. So if you go through and you've put a story together and you're looking at it, or if you made a video, if you try to narrate it, and the way it narrates itself is this and then that and then this and then that, then you need to relook at it and try to figure out where you can add those but moments. So I would throw that one up there.
So I like adding but moments. So I'm going to use that now for everything that I do. My but moments.
You're welcome. I figured. I was like, this is going to play way too well for him.
Yes. Sabrina she also goes, eyes and pausing, voice, body languages for storytelling is super important. One of the things that I have done, and I almost collect good storytellers. Like I love going to conferences and somebody tells a good story. I'm like, I'll either get the recording or I'll write it down, or I'm like, okay, why was that compelling? Like Chad at the end of his, he talks a lot about his unicycle riding, which is a great story, and he weaves that into his presentation. But then he has a very funny and then moving story at the end that you tell that kind of hooks and grabs the audience. And I didn't collect that story. I'm not going to steal it, but I'm like, okay, why did that work? Why was I drawn in? And I see, the more you can do that and start taking notes, and Chad mentioned journaling before, I think that's super important. Is like, okay, why did that move me? Why did that make an impact on me? And note that, and you don't want to steal stuff, but you want to like, okay, how can I have elements of that in my own story? I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because and people are always like, "Oh, I need to be funny." You don't have to be funny. And Jeff can attest to the fact that there were moments where there was fun and laughter in my presentation. Mm-hmm. But unlike most speakers or presentations you go to at some of these marketing conferences, like I literally end like there's people like crying, like because I shared a very moving moment, and I leave it at that. And people have been like, are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, yes, I do, because it's different. And what being different and sharing your stories does. And Jeff brought up the unicycle thing, that when I share the unicycle story, the point of the story, and I'm not sharing it right now because there's some, things that happen with the unicycle, but that you don't have to be the best. You just have to be memorable. And that's where the power of the story comes in. Is it Isabel that mentioned the eye movement and all the,
Sabrina,
Sabrina, I'm sorry, the physical components. Those are important too. So, obviously, if you're audibly telling it or on video, if you're a speaker, make sure that your movements are intentional when it comes to the physical side of telling the story. I see too many people that they start pacing, and I know it's a nervous thing, but if you can get in your head, plant your feet. Like just plant your feet. And let your face and your gestures and tell a story, so people are right here. You could bring them here. If people are having to do this because you're moving the whole time, right? Let them just bring them in. Mm-hmm. So I was glad that she kind of brought that up. So
yeah, good stuff.
That. So as I was preparing for having you on the show, Chad, I did a quick search on storytelling and what the industry is for storytellers. A quick search of job listings, just top of the Google search, brought up a wide variety of storytelling jobs, from digital storytellers, data storytellers, and then of course bloggers, writers, copy editors, video producers. So give us a sense for, if you recognize this as a skill that your company needs, like what do you need to look for in hiring a storyteller and hiring a company to help you bring out these stories? What things would you look for if you were running a B2B company? You don't think you're very funny, you don't think you're very entertaining, but you want stories about your company out there.
Yeah, it's interesting, the storytelling buzz, right? It's become like And I worry about that. I worry about it becoming just another buzzword that becomes worn out and overused and makes you
It'd be a
cringe
paradigm
when you
shift.
hear
It would be a paradigm shift if that happened.
It would be a
It seems
paradigm
very-
shift, right?
Yeah, the word
It
seems very
seems so
diluted.
authentic and transparent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, I've seen some of these job things because I watch and see what's going on, and I'll open and take a look at them. And it's like, okay, you're really, all you did was just tell me you want a copywriter, or you
Right.
just changed the name. A lot of
Mhm.
companies I'm seeing, they're just like, they're adding it to it. Like it's we want to do more storytelling, so let's call it this, but the job description is like the same.
Right.
And so that's kind of like frustrating. But as far as skills, I think you want to look for somebody who sent you a resume that tells a story immediately. If they're sending you resumes or things that just list, I did this, numbers, and don't give at least some kind of a short narrative or explanation of how they did it, then they're probably just not natively prone to tell things as a story. Give them a situation when, if you're talking to them, ask them, this is what I would ask, as how did you end up here in my office?
Right. That's a good one.
That
I
right
took a
there,
bus,
and
and
see
then
how
I
they
did
can
this,
tell it.
and then I did that.
Right. I don't know. The door
Right.
was open.
And
I
that's
just walked
and then
in.
I did that, and then I did that, and then I did that, right?
Yeah.
And
But
so,
Just kidding.
oh wait, now
But-
maybe there's something there.
Yeah. But I went to a chiropractor.
I'm not saying that, because might be somebody who can be taught the skill, but if you're looking for people who just natively are storytellers, then if you ask them that question, how did you end up here today? And you can tell by the way they answer it if they're just going to be the analytical, well, I took a bus or whatever, like you just said,
Mhm.
or, well, as a kid, I was always drawn towards blah, 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 blah. I don't know why. I just like numbers. I remember a time when I was in middle school and my teacher put this complex problem on the board and everyone seemed to struggle with it, but it just came to me and I don't know why. And so I started competing in these contests, but then I also realized that it wasn't cool and blah, blah, blah. It's just,
Right.
you could tell by the way somebody answers. That would be the question I'd ask. How'd you get here?
So I think so we're going to talk really quick because we don't have much time. And it's funny because Sabrina goes, can this session go for 2 hours instead of 1? So Sabrina, we will definitely have Chad on again because this is a fascinating thing. And it is something that she wasn't talking about you, Chad. She's talking about me.
I get it. Just so you know, Sabrina, he's filming you.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. The thing is I think one of the things that I think most people, and we're going to talk about this really quickly, building a storytelling strategy, is that you're scared to tell your story because the story is personal. Yeah. And I think it's easier to go, yeah, well, my business, what we do is this and this and this. And what do you do for your business? Instead of going, why I started the business is because I wanted to help these types of people. That's more vulnerable. And I think, yes, it's scarier to do, but that is where we can connect with people. Like I saw Chad, I always thought he was this weird guy with a fedora at Social Media Marketing World and stuff. And then I heard his story and we sat down each other and we talked. We're like, I did the same thing, or I'm doing the same thing, or I connect this way. Mm-hmm. And it was because we told each other stories and we connected through that. And so that's going to become more and more important. So sorry, Grace, I went on your section here, but you go ahead.
So throw one more thing out because I know you're going to run out of time. I do want to make sure people get that whole portal of belonging component.
Yeah, talk about that.
There's power in sharing your story, but there is so much more power in asking someone else's theirs. So just make sure I throw that out there.
Yeah. So go ahead and ask your question, Grace. I'm sorry I jumped on your.
Oh
section.
no, it's fine. I was compelled by the story, so I think that's what
there we
happens
go.
is you get lost in it. I'm like, I don't even know what I was going to ask. I guess wrapping this up, tell us, Chad, where we can find out more from you, about you. Megan just dropped in the comments that you're going to be in the Making a Marketer podcast soon. So our friend Megan Powers runs that podcast. So do check it out, called Making a Marketer. So where else can people find you, Chad?
Thestorycatcher.com. Like any good solopreneur guy, I have a website, but I really need to do more work on my own stuff instead of everyone else's. But it is there. You know, I'm on all the socials. You know, if you want to be the businessy thing, and you know, hit me on LinkedIn. But honestly, guys, I am all about sharing like my story and who I am, and I have no problem with somebody reaching out to me. And if they message me on Facebook and say, hey, I saw you on the show today, I'd really love to connect. Let's be Facebook friends as well. I spend probably more time there just because I feel like it's more personable for me. I'm not a spammer. You're not going to get blasted with a bunch of, in fact, I mostly tell people, go try and find some spammy business thing that I've ever posted, because I just share me, and I'm just about the relationships that we can build from stories. That's literally how my business has been built, is from that.
Right.
So spell your name, because I know that that's how people are going to find you. And saying Ia Peterson does not give it justice. So you go on. Right.
For those of you who can't see the letters on the screen, it's ILLA-PETERSEN. There are only 2 Ia Petersons in the entire world. So there you go.
There you go. Well, we had to say, because this is also a podcast. Just we mentioned Megan Powers.
I want to make sure people listening.
See,
I want to know that people listening can find you as well, because us saying the name really fast.
Like, why? I was like, why is she having me say it out loud? Like, this is weird.
So it's a quiz that we do for all of our guests to see if they can spell their own name.
Can you spell your own name? So half the time I can't spell mine, so it's fine.
So speaking of Grace Duffy, all things Grace Duffy, where can people find the amazing Grace Duffy?
You can find me here every Friday with Jeff, except when we do turkey things and Christmas things and New Year's Eve things, because the holidays are coming up. But I do work for Restream, which is a happy little partner goes well with Ecamm, our sponsor. So you can find me over there, over at the Restream site and YouTube channel and everywhere else.
And this is a podcast, like we mentioned, so make sure you just go to any of your favorite podcast players. Just do a search for Social Media News Live. We should come right up, and we'd love for a rating and review. I would like to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Ecamm. They help me tell a story every week with the amazing software that we're allowed to bring these lower thirds, different cameras, and it's recorded, and it goes out to all the different places. It's just amazing. So make sure you guys go check out socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. Check them out. They're amazing company. I love them to death. And don't forget, our next show is Friday, December 3rd at 11 a.m., 10 a.m. Central. And you can always find us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Amazon Live. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Sabrina, for all you guys' questions and comments. Gabe was here, and Chris, and all of you who show up every week. We would not be able to do this show without you. Thank you so much for being part of the community. And with that, we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
No, it's actually a powerful live streaming app for Mac called Ecamm Live. You can add some overlays to your video, whether it's a simple graphic or you want to have some titles or other info at the bottom of your screen. You can even add animated overlays like this one or this one. And you can add branded overlays to frame you and your guests and look like a real legit broadcast. And you can save each layout as a scene and switch between them with the press of a button.